Good morning, grade 4. I hope you remember what we learned in the last class. It was about pollination, right? So we'll move deeper into the topic and we'll see some other topics related to pollination. Okay? So, do you understand how pollination is happening? The pollinator. Can you see the butterfly who is a pollinator? The butterfly is moving from one flower to the other. And what is carried on with the butterfly? Yes, it is the pollen grains, right? So, the transfer of pollen grains from one flower to another, that is called pollination, right? I hope you remember what we discussed during the last VCC. Now, let's move on. See here, what is the honeybee doing? Yes, the honeybee is actually, he's taking the nectar from the flower and also the pollen, right? Along with the pollen, it moves on to the next flower. Can you see the stigma, the pollen and the anther which is labeled in the structure? What is stigma? It is the female part of the plant and the anther is the male part of the flower. I hope you remember this. And the pollen is also the male part, right? Yes. Now, this is what happens during a pollination, right? Can you see what is happening? What is the first step? The pollinator visits flower and collects the nectar, right? The nectar is produced by the flower to attract these pollinators, right? And then what happens? The pollen is rubbed onto the pollinator's body. Here, the bee is collecting the nectar and the pollen and is rubbing its body against the pollen. And what happens? The pollinator carries the pollen on its body to another flower. That's how the pollination is happening. And the pollen is deposited on the stigma in the process. Stigma again is the female part of the flower. Okay. So let's see a small definition for pollination. That is, pollination is the mating process in flowering plants. Especially, it is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther, which is the male part of the plant, to the stigma, which is the female part of the plant of a flower. Okay, so this is the definition for pollination. Now, what is the result of pollination? What happens to a flower after pollination? Let's see in this picture. You can see that the ovary is here, or the female part of the flower is here, and what happens? This is the flower just after fertilization. Fertilization means that is after pollination. You can see here what happens when the male pollen forms on the female part of the flower. A baby or a next plant is going to develop, right? And that plant is going to get developed from a seed which develops inside the flower, right? So, as a result of pollination, fertilization happens, and as a result of fertilization, seed is formed inside a flower, okay? And what is the use of the seed? You know, we see lots of seeds, right? Green gram is a seed, right? All these seeds we eat. What happens if we soak this seed inside water for some time and then we keep it for another 6 hours? What happens? They germinate, right? They'll develop into a new plant. So seed is where the life is, okay? Now we'll see. The seed should be dispersed for it to germinate on a soil, right? So let's see how the seeds are dispersed, okay? So the seed dispersal happens by different methods. Let's see what are they. What are they? They are wind, by animals, by water, by splitting open forcefully. You know, when you see these different kinds, you will have lots of examples popping out in your mind, right? Let's see the examples. Seed dispersal by wind. Wow, did you see the dandelion? How beautiful the dandelions are, right? How the seeds of the dandelion are spread or dispersed by wind, right? So the seeds which are dispersed by wind need special characters, you know. They should be very small, they should be light, that is lightweight, and they should be dry, and they should have wing-like structures, like, you know, they should be they should easily be carried away by the wind. So that is how the wind dispersed seeds are like, okay? Example is dandelion. You can see how dandelion seeds are dispersed by the wind. Next is dispersal by animals. That is, one is eaten. If it is eaten by animals and the animal will defecate and go and defecate in another place, dispersal is happening. So example, or how a flower should be. It should be bright colored, it should be sweet, and it should be juicy. Okay, so the fruit of that seed dispersal should be very juicy. Can you see tomato, juicy red tomatoes? So the animals will get attracted when they see the juicy fruit, right? So the fruit should be bright colored, sweet and juicy for the animals to disperse the seeds. And what happens if the animal should carry the seed? It should be small and it should have hooks to attach to that animal. Okay? An example is, you can see that kind of animal, squirrel. He always go and, eats all these seeds, right? So it will carry the seed from one place to another, thereby dispersing the seed. Next is dispersal by water. Can you see the example? What is it actually inside the water? Yes, it is a coconut, right? Yes. So how should a seed be in order to be dispersed by water? They should be buoyant, and it should be lightweight. It should always float in water. Then it should be waterproof and also air spaces in it. Okay. So this is the characteristic of a seed which is dispersed by water. And also the last one, dispersal by simply splitting open. Can you see this? Have you seen this? We call it in Malayalam Manjadikuru. Yes, you might have heard of it, right? So Manjadikuru, that is all saga. It's actually in English, it's called saga. And that seed is dispersed by simply splitting open by its own. Okay, so they should be hard and dry. Okay, they should have a hard fruit wall and dry. Okay, so you have a story of the seeds getting dispersed, right? Now the seed is fallen on the soil. Now what's going to happen? Let's see. Yes, the life cycle of a plant. Let us see this, okay? Now, starting from the seed, which is in the soil. What happens to the seed? The seed will, when the conditions are okay, when there is enough sunlight, when there is enough humidity, or when there is enough water, what happens to the seed? It will sprout. And it becomes a small seedling, and then it becomes a fully developed plant, right? This is the life cycle of a plant, right? And what here also it is explained, the flower is there, and what happens, the flower after fertilization gets into fruit, and inside the fruit we have seeds where the life is. The seed falls on the soil and becomes a young plant, then again a mature plant, then again the flower comes and the cycle is continued, right? This is how the life cycle of a plant continues, okay? So you understood how or what are the different methods in which the seeds are dispersed, right? And how the life cycle of a plant is completed, right? Did you understand that, children? Yes, so I hope you watch it before the BCC so that we can discuss a lot about this, okay? Have a nice day.